Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
This is the Black Gold Banneret Podcast. Now, here are your hosts, Jeff Sharon, Eric Lopez, and Brian Murphy.
Welcome, one and all, to the Black Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff, Eric, and Brian with you on early this week. We're recording this on Tuesday night, November 24th. Gentlemen, do you know what number show this is?
250.
250. Can you believe we've done 250 shows together? Well, we haven't done them all. Like, Murphy kind of parachuted in a little bit late.
Yeah. To be fair, I've only done like 160.
But Elo, you and me, man, for the most part, 250 shows. We haven't killed each other yet. How great is that?
I know, that's the shocking development.
Good thing we don't do this in person.
Good point. That's the technology may have saved us all, ladies and gentlemen, foreshadowed there. That's the longest running episodic podcast, UCF podcast out there, ladies and gentlemen,
right.
By the way.
We are the longest running, yes. The longest running UCF podcast. We can say that now. It's great. I love it. Lots to talk about today. Even though, first of all, happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Hope we are the first to wish you that. Hope you all are staying safe. We got lots to talk about on your on this pre-Thanksgiving show. Obviously, UCF and USF on Friday, Black Friday down in Tampa. We'll be previewing that. Some news about that game that we'll get to from coming from the mouth of one Dylan Gabriel, which we will go over in just a second. A little bit later, we will preview real quick our sort of our quick and dirty men's basketball preview with UCF starting out this tough weekend, really, with Oklahoma and Auburn Saturday and then Monday to open the season. And, of course, Wednesday night, women's basketball gets underway with a game against Virginia. We'll be previewing them as well. So lots to get to. So let's but before we dive into football, just a reminder, you can follow us at blackandgoldbanneret.com. We are UCF's home on the SB Nation Network. You can also follow us on Twitter at UCF_Banneret and at Facebook.com/blackandgoldbanneret, where you can find all the latest on UCF sports. So let's begin. UCF coming off of the loss to Cincinnati in what was a very close game. I would kind of call this a coin flip, but I mean, let's tip our caps to Cincinnati. I thought that they were clearly the better team. They're undefeated. They are number 7 in the BCS in the college football playoff rankings, the first ones, which came out earlier today. Nonetheless, given all that, like I said, it's credit to them. They got the job done in pretty dramatic fashion with that rushing performance in the second half, where they were held to, what was it, Murph, 6 yards rushing in the first half, and then they racked up, I think, almost 150 plus in the second half. Is that right?
Something around those, yeah, something around that number, yes.
Yeah, I mean, they were fantastic, and you got to give them credit. So, but all these people saying, "Oh, the season's over." Actually, no, the season's not over, because there's one more game left to play, and that's against the South Florida Bulls in Tampa. USF comes in, well, pretty doggone bad. The line for this game opened up at 25 and has not moved. It's been a struggle for USF this year with in Jeff Scott's first year. They are coming off a 56-21 drubbing at the hands of Houston. They had a week off prior to this game. It's just been bad. It's now that's not to say that they're not going to show up for this game, but well, actually, come to think of it, they may be running into some personnel problems heading into this game. So Murph, there's been a little bit of grumblings about will we even be able to get this game off on Friday? What's the latest from your perspective?
Yeah, it's one of the there's not much intrigue surrounding the actual matchup. Really, one of the interesting questions of this game is, will it actually be played? And if you're familiar with USF, they didn't play last week. It's because they couldn't. They literally did not have enough bodies to play against Navy. So that game got postponed last Wednesday, the 17th, and it's been tough. I know I was reading around some articles, and USF was practicing last week, guys, with 64 players. I wouldn't even say players. They were practicing with 64 people,
right.
Meaning if you include the scholarship players, plus walk-ons, plus grad assistant managers, plus players who aren't eligible because they haven't given their waiver from transferring yet.
Plus a couple kids brought over from a local high school. Plus, no, that's not for real, but I'm joking. But anyway.
But no, but like everyone else, like they're basically just pulling bodies onto the field just so they can hold a full practice. Like they've got team managers suiting up in full pads to run scout team. They have 2 scholarship corners who are available. They're suffering. It's obviously a lot of COVID problems, obviously with guys quarantining for weeks at a time, but also just a ton of injuries. We have opt-outs, and now you've got a big transfer this morning, or a huge piece of news that dropped this morning from head coach Jeff Scott, that their leading running back, Johnny Ford, transferring out of the program.
Wow.
And he did not address questions. He just started his press conference on Tuesday with that nugget, and so he's gone. And those who have watched USF for the last couple of years know how dynamic Johnny Ford was. Like he gave you some hope because he was like an Adrian Killens type player. He was a big play waiting to happen, and now he's gone. But I've heard from people I've talked to who are well versed in the program at USF that I think early in the week there was a lot of skepticism over whether or not this game would be played. And then today, talking to them, it seems to be a little more optimistic that it's gone from probably not to a definitely maybe. And so I think for us, we will know whether or not this game will be played by tomorrow afternoon. I should say by Wednesday afternoon. I pointed out for a couple reasons. One, the Friday date, really gives you a very compacted time schedule. So the sooner you know, the better. 2, Wednesday was the day we found out the Navy game would be postponed. And that's because on Wednesday, you get college football in the AAC, you have players take 3 tests per week. You have a test, a virus test on Monday, a virus test on Wednesday, and another test on Friday, which I assume would be moved up to Thursday this week. But Wednesday is a very important day because that's the day that the Monday test results come back. So they'll be able to see who is clear and who is not clear yet. And by that point, they should have a decent idea of just the simple question: do we have enough players to actually play in this game? The American does not have a minimum number of players that need to be eligible to play. They kind of take it on a case-by-case basis with each program. But USF, like Temple a couple weeks ago, USF is sort of riding that border of they may not have enough players on one of their defensive or offensive lines. They may not have enough defensive backs to play in a game, so we'll see. But I do know that there's been a little more positivity, at least from what they've heard down there today. But I think we will know by Wednesday afternoon whether or not this game will be played.
Wonder if you could inject them with truth serum if they actually want to play this game, because they've lost 7 in a row since their opening win against the Citadel, which is their only win. They were shut out by Notre Dame 52-0. They've given up no fewer than 28 points in each of their games so far this year. And now in comes UCF with a number 2 ranked offense. USF's offense has struggled all year. They're 109th in the country in total offense. Defense not that much better, 76th. it's just been a struggle at this point. But one of the things that it's obviously it's a rivalry game, but there's a little bit of news here that we want to kind of address. And again, we're recording this on Wednesday. We don't know what's going to happen for the game, but
actually, we're recording Tuesday night.
Well, we're recording Tuesday. That's right. Normally we record Wednesday. We're recording Tuesday. Thank you. See, creature of habit. 250 shows. That's what happens. But Dylan Gabriel spoke to the media, Eric Lopez, and here's what he was asked about the possibility of McKenzie Milton. And here's what Dylan had to say about it.
As a fan, I'd want it to be a surprise, so I can't say yes, I can't say no. We'll just see, we'll see what happens. But I know Kenzie is doing great mentally and physically, and he's ready to do so whenever he's ready to do so. So I'm gonna let that just be it and see what happens. So
well, Eric Lopez, what do we make of that?
It means we got some excitement and some intrigue in this game, is what that means.
Good, folks. Thank goodness, because there wouldn't be much excitement or intrigue around it anyway if it wasn't for that. Yeah.
Now I will say I'm going to brag here a second. Before the season started, and I think I did it on this podcast, and I did it on another podcast where they asked me about McKenzie Milton and if he would play, would he not? And I kind of predicted the South Florida game that would be the 2-year anniversary of the, going back to the scene. It's very cinematic type of deal. Like I'm telling you, if he plays this game, Murph, I don't know who would direct the movie, who would play McKenzie Milton. That might be a future article you're gonna have to work in if McKenzie plays in this game. But that we'll put that on the side. But to me now, that has become a bigger story than the actual game. Scott Van Pelt talked about it on his show. Andrea Adelson of ESPN.com wrote a lengthy article, Murph, about Milton. There's a lot of smoke here about McKenzie Milton. Now, you were in that media availability. What was your reaction to the Gabriel comments? What did Josh Heupel have to say about it, and your overall thoughts here?
Well, it's always fun when you're on a Zoom call and something like this happens, because you immediately see like 8 pairs of ears automatically perk up. Like, what? Say again now?
Like, what? Who?
Because, I think I've said before, like Dylan Gabriel is not usually a guy who drops a lot of bombs. He's usually a very nondescript talker when it comes to the media. Very cliche, a lot of coach speak, a lot of boilerplate stuff. But this was like, wait, what's happening? And especially because he was not specifically asked. I've written about this on the site. I wrote an article on Monday about will McKenzie play or not. That opening question to Dylan was not phrased as, do you think McKenzie will play in this game? It was phrased as, has there been talk between you and him about what this game means to McKenzie really kind of returning to the scene where, his career and his life changed and how significant this is. And Dylan just sort of, like, as you hear, Dylan just sort of goes off into this, well, I'd like it to be a surprise. Like, a surprise? Like, what do you mean a surprise?
Right, like what? Surprise about what?
So that is what sort of like ignited everything on Monday, and so I couldn't let that die. I followed up a couple minutes later, and I just said, Dylan, that was a very interesting answer you had about McKenzie there, and I just wanted to ask, should fans be watching out for something, even though you don't want to give it away? And he just says, he interjects and goes, I would just be honest. There's a bunch of surprises. I would just sit back and see. I'm not saying he is. I'm not saying he isn't. I'm just saying, who knows? You know what I mean? So we'll see. It sounds like this guy knows something. And if you haven't watched the video, you can go on UCF Athletics' YouTube account and watch these pressers. While Dylan is speaking, he has this like huge grin on his face. I mean, it's literally the worst poker face in the history of football media.
Brighter than a Hawaii sunset, my man. It really is.
It's bright. And so it just leads you to believe that, boy, there is definitely, like you said, there's definitely a lot of smoke here. So then, of course, Tuesday comes. We're scheduled to talk to Josh Heupel. And the question is asked, because obviously it's asked, just straight up. Will McKenzie be available for this game? And Josh Heupel, no surprise, gives us no glimpse, no hints to anything. Just says that McKenzie Milton continues to get better and better every day. but does not does not lean one way or the other about him playing in this game. He does say later on in his interview today on Tuesday that he knows the McKenzie Milton story has yet to be completed. The ending has yet to be written. But as far as this week goes, Josh Heupel was not willing to divulge anything. But just from Dillon Gabriel's, not only his words, but his facial expressions, it leads you to believe that there's something here. There's definitely something here. It's going to be the most anticipated pregame warm-ups that we've had all season, no doubt.
Oh, you better believe there are going to be a number of binoculars and camera lenses trained on that UCF tunnel to see if number 10 comes out in pads. Well, like I said earlier, I thank goodness, because the game itself, at least from this perspective, for the reasons we've already talked about, on paper looks like a walkover at this point, or at least that it should be, at Tampa.
Did you hear they were asked about UCF's offense? And I know we have a clip from Jeff Scott, but outside of the clip, he was asked, how concerned are you with only having 2 scholarship cornerbacks facing this UCF offense? And Jeff Scott just says, very.
I would be too if I were him. That's probably the most honest answer you could possibly ask from a head coach. Here's what Oddshark is saying right now, Eric. UCF is a 25-point favorite on the road, mind you. All right. 98% of the money is on the minus.
It's a road game? Are you sure? Some would argue that even when there have been fans in the building in the past, the last time this game was played, it was a pro UCF crowd.
Well, in the box score, it's going to count as a road game. Let's put it that way. 98% of the money is on UCF minus the 25. And 91% of the money is on the over of 67. So, I mean, Jeff Scott clearly has a very difficult task on his hands. I don't envy him. And we've seen this before, where there are teams that, with UCF, right, where you struggle at first, and then things start to pick up once the coaching staff gets the personnel in that they want. But it's just it's not even that they're entertaining bad, they're just listless out there, right?
Well, I mean, guys, it's been a rough year. I think Coach Scott said that they have 1,004 problems this year. It's been really tough. This has been a really trying year for that program, starting with the inevitability of opting out, players opting out, which I know USF had a couple of handfuls of players opting out, which is fine. But then they get mollywopped with COVID quarantines and injuries, and then guys deciding not to play during the season, or like with Johnny Ford's case, transferring off the team. It's just it's left the cupboard bare, absolutely bare. So it's just awful circumstances. I mean, I know UCF fans will be like giggling because there's a rivalry game like this, USF lose badly, but like honestly, I really actually do hate to see it.
Can I be the pessimistic here? Not panic button, but
you. Yeah. I'm not gonna give up the belt that early, Eric. Go ahead, make your case.
Let me just say this: 2013. UCF had a much better team than South Florida. That was Willie Taggart. They had a bad. I think they won like 3 games. It came down to the wire because UCF turned the ball over like 3-4 times. It was a sloppy game, and it's just a rivalry game. This is a trophy game, and both of these coaches know that very well. You mentioned Jeff Scott. This is Jeff Scott. He knows all about rivalry games. His dad was an assistant at Florida State, part of the Florida State games, was also head coach at the South Carolina for the Clemson South Carolina games. Jeff Scott, as he mentioned on Tuesday, this is UCF presents a challenge, but a challenge means opportunity.
UCF is obviously very, very talented, has a very deep roster. I think they're either number 1 or number 2 overall in the country in total offense. I know they're number 1 in the country in passing offense. Their quarterback is an excellent player, leading the country with over 3,000 yards passing. Receiver Marlon Williams, currently number 2 in the country with over 1,000 yards receiving. And, defensively, what you see is a lot of athleticism, great size. and really a lot of depth. I mean, they're playing 10 or 11 D linemen that all look like they could really be starters. Very disruptive on the defensive line. I think that's a big emphasis for our offense this week, is we got to get the ball out and not allow those defensive linemen to get penetration. And they also lead the country with 20 turnovers on defense. So very impressive what they've been able to do this year. And no doubt a great challenge, but like I talk to our guys about all the time, with great challenges come great opportunities.
All right, so that was Jeff Scott, the head coach there at South Florida. So while, look, I mean, UCF should win this game. Weird things happen in these rivalry games. You just never know. And UCF, look, for as much as we just dogged South Florida, you could argue, should have beaten Memphis. They outplayed Memphis at Memphis. They had a 2-score lead. They got conservative in the fourth quarter, and they lost that game very, close. But they hang with Memphis. So, this is going to be their bowl game. They're going to be jacked up. They're going to look for this opportunity. And no one knows that better than Josh Heupel, because Josh Heupel, he's even said, this is a trophy game. He's been a part of these rivalries. He knows this is his players will be ready because they know that the other team's going to be ready.
Guys are excited about this one. This is a lot of our guys have grown up in the state watching this game, watching this rivalry. A bunch of guys that have played in it a bunch. End of the regular season means a bunch to our guys, and it's a trophy game. I said that earlier, and important to us. They've been great.
So there's Josh Heupel talking about it. So, South Florida has a chance. That being said, pain is coming, and I think there's a lot of pain here is going to come towards South Florida. And I'm going to tell you something. What's interesting, and I don't know if Jeff, I think you've picked up on this. A lot of UCF fans still haven't let go and forgotten, and I surely haven't, the 2007 game where South Florida just took it to us, 64-12.
In Tampa.
And I think in Tampa, and just ran it up. And while UCF's dominated this rivalry recently, UCF hasn't had put up that kind of a score in a game. Like I said, these games have been semi-competitive. I mean, you could argue the last 2 years were blowouts, but they weren't like satisfactory blowout. Certainly not 2 years ago. Obviously, nobody enjoyed that at all. I mean, with the Milton injury. And then last year, Murph, you and I were there. UCF dominated, but it was like a whatever game. It was a 34-7 game.
Yeah.
Heck, you and I think, watched UCF basketball on the computer during the second half. That's how boring that.
Everyone did. No one reveled in it. Everyone just wanted to move on as quickly as possible.
Right. But I think what's interesting here, I think UCF fans want UCF to put in a big score. And I know USF's depleted, but that 07 game, man, and remember, these were people, Jeff, you know this, they didn't want to play UCF. They kept them out of the Big East. There's still a lot of animosity about that, and I think people want to put up a big score. And I will say this about the Milton thing, whether he plays or doesn't play, I think this is also part of the motivation here within, because for him to play, I think it's going to have to be in a blowout. Do we all agree on that? Like, if he plays, they're not going to put him in the they're not. I don't think they start him.
Yeah, they're not going to start him.
I think he comes in mop-up duty in the fourth quarter. Do you agree with that, Murph, if he plays?
Yeah, my whole thing is this with McKenzie. Let's say for some reason he suits up and then doesn't play for whatever reason. Just seeing him suit up is going to be monumental in full pads, full uniform. It's going to be monumental. Right. And then if he plays one play, that is going to be the lead or second story on SportsCenter that night. It's going to be a huge deal. And so people who are talking about series or how much will he play, it doesn't matter. If he even is eligible to play, amazing. If he gets on the field for one snap, unbelievable.
If he gets on the field for one snap, I've even if it's a kneel down. I mean, I've said this before. That's the story of the year in college football.
Yep.
But I think that's the motivation though that this team is going to play with here. That's the whole thing. To get to that point, they need to take care of business. They have to take care of South Florida. They need to pound them and dominate them early to set that up. The last thing you want is this game to go 4 quarters, let's say. So I think there's a couple of motivations here. The trophy thing, the rivalry, yes, but also I think these players, especially the group of players that were there 2 years ago to see that unfortunate scene, want this to happen. And that's why I think UCF's going to actually be – I'm not actually worried about them not being motivated, despite the fact that, I think they're going to be ready to go and then some.
Another little bit of motivation for you, by the way. The all-time series between these two schools is 6-5 in favor of USF. But, of course, you remember the first 4 were all won by USF when these teams were not part of the same conference. So UCF since has been 5-2, chance to actually even up the all-time series for UCF in Tampa, with the game, of course, next year being scheduled for Orlando. TV, Eric, what are we thinking?
It is ESPN, 3:30. And the other reason why I'm confident, by the way, that UCF will win and win comfortably, UCF's best broadcasting, folks. Roy Philpott and Kelly Stocker.
You know what we need to do, Eric? I don't know if we could do this, but maybe you and I can do this. We need to go back and maybe do a little media guide work here and see what UCF's record is with certain broadcast teams. Because I would argue that maybe Roy Philpott and Kelly Stouffer, they might be the winningest ESPN broadcast crew for UCF, I would say, probably. What do you think?
They don't lose. If they're doing the UCF game, it's a lock. It's a win. It is the opposite of Mark Jones. That is clear. And I love Mark Jones.
Poor Mark. I was in the press box. I met Mark. He's the kindest guy in the world. But we just can't catch a break with him. Mark, I'm sorry. I just, if I see you on a UCF game, I'm going to be like, no. I'm not. I'm out. I'm out on this one.
We could be in trouble. We've lost 2 games this year with Mark there. Although he did, in fairness to him, he did call the Stanford win last year. But we're struggling. But he's no Roy Philpott or Kelly Stouffer, who are on a roll. They are on a streak. I mean, they've got UCF has won bowl game. They're the defending Gasparilla champions with Stouffer. I mean, this is an unstoppable group. Like, if we get our goal next year to win the league, we got to make sure we get Roy Philpott, Kelly Stouffer as many times doing UCF games.
I'm in favor of it. ESPN 3:30 on Black Friday. UCF against USF at Raymond James Stadium, and as UCF tries to even up the all-time series at 6 and retain the War on I-4 trophy.
The Cincinnati game Saturday did a $1.8 million. I'll write about this more next week. We have so much content this week. I decided to wait for next week to write the TV articles because I'll get the USF numbers next week. But $1.8 million, very strong numbers for the Cincinnati game. I don't know if UCF will do that number, but it did a very strong number last week in the same time slot. I wonder if it would do that at a certain point during the game for reasons we've just illuminated. So, that's true. So, I'd love to know the quarter hourlies on that one. But anyway, all right, let's take a quick break. When we get back, it's time to talk some UCF basketball. The men's team tips off their season on Saturday against Oklahoma. We've got lots of sound from Johnny Dawkins and a couple of the players as we look forward to what should be an interesting basketball season, and one big name who will be making their debut in black and gold on Saturday that we've been looking forward to for a while. Stick around. The Black and Gold Banneret Podcast is back after this.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.
Welcome back to the show. Jeff, Eric, and Brian with you. It is basketball time. We're getting football on Friday, men's basketball on Saturday. Don't forget the women's game on Wednesday, the day before Thanksgiving. UCF plays the University of Virginia. We'll preview the women's team in a little bit, but let's talk about the men's team because we had some news drop earlier today. In fact, Brian Murphy and Eric Lopez. C.J. Walker, the highly touted transfer from Oregon, a former 5-star recruit originally from Sanford, according to John Rothstein and later confirmed by UCF, has been declared eligible. He will be in uniform for UCF when they play Oklahoma. Of course, COVID pending, right? You never know. But, just a couple of reminders, 6'8". He's, as you wrote on the site, Brian, he got 7 starts in 28 games and averaged just 4 points per game. But don't let those stats fool you. This dude is talented. And as Coach Dawkins said, he has huge upside, doesn't he, Brian Murphy?
Yeah, absolutely does. But before we go to Dawkins talking about C.J. Walker, let's also say that I did not write the article that we have on C.J. Walker. That was Jeremy.
I'm
Brenner
sorry, Jeremy.
article.
Oh my God, I'm so used to you writing basketball stuff, and Jeremy took the baton from you this afternoon. That's right,
And
Jeremy. I'm sorry.
The news actually came out on Monday, not Tuesday. Boy, Jeff, this is a great week for you. What's happening,
dude? I'm getting. Listen,
clearly, Jeff is going through the Josh Heupel, Jeff Scott playbook of Monday's really Tuesday, Tuesday's really Wednesday.
That's what happens when you have kids. But so yes. Anyway, the news did drop this. Let's call it this week. We also reported on it this week, so at least we're comfortable in that timeline. But tell me about C.J. Walker. I mean, by the way, I'll put it in the show notes. We did a show with Mike O'Donnell over the summer when Walker announced that he was transferring to UCF. Really breaking down his game, which was just it was a lot of fun to talk to Mike about him, and we're hoping to have Mike on again sometime in the very, very near future to talk a little bit more hoops with us. But what does this mean really for UCF to get him eligible? Because you just never know if the NCAA is going to come through on this kind of stuff, but they did, didn't they?
Well, yeah. Finally, you just don't know when these letters are going to come in, and you've seen other programs across the country who've had guys, ruled eligible. So UCF is just over there sort of just twiddling their thumbs, waiting for the letter to drop. And they got word on Monday that, yes, he is eligible. And what does it mean? Well, I can leave that up to Johnny Dawkins and to the Knights players, because we've had opportunities to speak with Coach Dawkins and some UCF players about a number of topics. But obviously everyone wants to talk about C.J. Walker, the first 5-star prospect in this program's history. So you're going to hear 3 voices here back to back to back, starting with Coach Dawkins, then Darren Green Jr. and Dre Fuller, talking about C.J. Walker finally being eligible to play for the UCF Knights.
We got the word yesterday that he was cleared, that he got the waiver, and he definitely will impact us because he gives us another player with versatility. He's very active, makes a lot of plays, defensively. He can make plays offensively as well. No, we're excited to have him.
Darren, what can you say about C.J. Walker? Obviously, there's a lot of hype around him coming into this program, but what have you seen from him in practice?
That's probably one of the most athletic guys I play with, as far as going to get a lob and getting blocks. Just he's a dog as well. He's everywhere. Plays D. He can't do anything but help us.
I can't wait to play with him. The energy that he brings to the team is just amazing. He gets everybody hype, everybody ready to go, especially if he do a dunk or something or a block. We're going to run to him and dap him up. So we're very excited for him.
There's Coach Dawkins and a couple of players talking about C.J. Walker. You hear Darren Green Jr. talking about his athleticism. And obviously everyone knows what he brings, right? A lot of length, a lot of shot blocking ability, scoring, high flying ability, that athleticism, the ability to really, he could turn into the guy of when you need a bucket, who do you go to? And last year certainly it was Colin Smith. This year it might be C.J. Walker. And then defensively on the perimeter, guys, with his length and his ability to guard 4 or 5 positions, when you put him and Dre Fuller maybe on the perimeter, those two are going to be nightmares for backcourts. For a lot of 2 guards or maybe even some point guards, and for a lot of teams this year. So not only does CJ bring a lot offensively, and everyone knows about it because they can watch his highlight reels, but defensively, this team is really set up well.
So let me ask you this, Murph. Right now, matchups notwithstanding, because we know that Coach Dawkins likes to mix it up from time to time. Lord knows he did it enough last year for various reasons, but. If you were in Coach Dawkins' shoes, what would be your starting 5 for this team heading into Oklahoma?
I think there are 4 guys here that are definite starters. Certainly Darius Perry, the transfer from Louisville, is certainly your point guard. Just the experience that he has. I know they still like Tony Johnson Jr., but Darius Perry is your point guard. Your 2 guard is going to be Darren Green Jr. And just his shooting ability, and obviously another year. He knows he can shoot, but he's also wanted to expand his offensive game this year. Be interesting to see how that plays out. And then at the 3, 4, 5, with CJ being eligible, you can really sort of move things around. But I think right now, to start, you might see some sort of lineup of Brandon Mahan at the 3, CJ at the 4, Sean Mobley at the 5, kind of acting as a stretch 5, a guy who doesn't need to be sitting in the paint. But to kind of double back on that, I would not be shocked at all if Dre Fuller started at the 3, because he's a big body guy who could actually play down there with some small forwards. And, I think one of the good things about CJ being eligible is that it keeps Avery Diggs from being your starting 5, which with Avery, the offense has to change a little bit because he's sort of stationed in the paint. He can't really stretch that much. He's not much of a good shooter from outside, close range. But Sean Mobley gives you more flexibility at the 5. So that lineup, the Perry, Green, Mahan, Walker, Mobley lineup gives you a lot of flexibility, and then you can mix and match it with other players. It gives you certainly more depth. But I just like the way that those guys can sort of create mismatches at different spots.
Interesting, though, because, if that's the 3 that you're looking at, that's your front 3 would be 6'8", 6'8", 6'5". That's pretty small, though, don't you think?
I mean, Colin Smith was 6'10", and you've seen a lot. Look at what Houston has done, these past few years. They have not been a very big team, but they have hustled. They have worked hard for boards. Rebounding is not all about size. I mean, UCF can certainly attest to that. When they were getting absolutely dunked on by Memphis time and time again with Taco Fall, Chad Brown, Colin Smith. I mean, size doesn't matter. It's about positioning and it's about effort. And certainly CJ Walker is the guy who's going to bring that effort, and coaches talk about that. So I'm not concerned about the size. I think those guys certainly CJ has the length to certainly play taller than 6'8". That's not going to be an issue.
Yeah.
It's about, can they be in the right spots? Can they be in good position? And are they willing to fight, and get dirty for those loose balls?
So, Eric, when you're looking at this roster and you're looking at these particular players, who's, aside from CJ Walker, who are the players that you think, especially among the newcomers, I think that you're really looking forward to seeing the most?
Well, I'm interested in Sean Mobley because, but you talk about a guy that's gotten so much positivity feedback from players and Coach Dawkins is Sean Mobley. We had Mike O'Donnell. You mentioned that when we had Mike. He talked about Sean Mobley being a guy, a glue guy, a chemistry guy, a guy that could do some things here. Murph, I know you got to talk to him when he was made available through the media, but there's a lot of everybody seems to have high remarks about Sean Mobley and what he's going to bring to this team.
Yeah, I mean, it sort of seems like if you're looking for one replacement for Colin Smith, a lot of guys point to Sean Mobley, and so that's something I asked Sean Mobley when we got to talk to him recently. So we got to sort of meet with him through Zoom as one does, and talk to him not only about him possibly how does he replace Colin Smith, but also his journey to UCF. Because, he transferred here from VCU, no less. He played against UCF in the tournament, guys, 2 years ago.
Right.
And he transferred here. And then also his thoughts on UCF's grueling non-conference schedule, which me and Eric broke down for the site last week. So here is Sean Mobley talking about those things, how he came to UCF, possibly replacing Colin Smith, and what he thinks about the Knights' early season gauntlet schedule. When you came to UCF, why did you come to UCF? You actually played against UCF in the NCAA tournament, right, with VCU 2 years ago. So then what made your decision to sort of join UCF that following year?
Well, there was a part of me that wanted to come home, but also the coaching staff really caught my eye. Just Coach Dawkins he's a relaxed dude, but at the same time, if you give him your all and 100%, then he gives you free range to kind of do what you want inside of the boundaries. And then I I mean, it was just a conference upgrade as well. Moving into the American Conference was big for me, so I could play better competition. And I mean, just the system overall that we run here, it fits my game better than VCU's that I feel like.
Sean, obviously, Colin Smith decided not to play this season. With him not being able to play this season, how much of replacing him do you think falls upon you, and how do you think you can replace him?
I mean, yeah, that was definitely, a huge loss. I don't think there's really a way to replace Colin, but he was always dirty, taking charges. You know what I mean? Banging down there with the other big guys. But I will say that our three other bigs, Avery, Moses, and Jamil, I think that they're doing a fantastic job. Getting in shape, taking care of their bodies, putting in the work, extra shots. So I've been impressed with them, and I think we can fill his void pretty well.
Sean, you guys start non-conference with a lot of tests, right? Oklahoma, Auburn, Florida State, Michigan. You look at those four. What do you think?
Oh, I love it. I love it. I think a lot of people are looking over us, are underestimating us, and I think that's why like some of these extra teams are scheduling us, because I think that they're going to just be a quick, easy win. But that's definitely not the case. I'm the type of dude that loves competition. The dudes on the team love competition. And I mean, it's a national setting too. It's all eyes on us. You know what I mean? So I love that. I'm excited. I mean, I love that stuff.
So there's Sean Mobley. I adore that last answer about the schedule. I love it. 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 It's so guys. I think he loves it. I think he loves it. And just obviously that little dig there about, well, they're scheduling us because they think they're going to beat us easily, and that's not going to be the case. Like, you know what? As someone who thrives on good sound bites, like, I think I'm going to really enjoy Sean Mobley being a part of this program now.
Oh my God! Now another new guy I'm excited to see is Darius Perry. Murphy, you mentioned earlier you think he'll be the starting point guard. You believe? What does he bring to this team?
Well, he brings certainly leadership. He's I think a senior, and then defensively he does a lot of that. He can be a shutdown guard. So again, guys, it's going to be another team where, I know this is shocking, but UCF is going to basically depending on defense again. But obviously they don't have a guy like Taco setting the tone, but they're going to have a lot of different guys, and Darius is a part of that. So. But Eric, how do you think Darius Perry is going to fit in on this team?
I'm looking forward to it. I think he's going. That's the part with him and Darren. Tony maybe coming off the bench. I think they're going to get an upgrade there in the backcourt play. Nothing against Dazon last year, but Darius could score more, don't you think, Murph? I think he could score more from his position than Dazon, who sometimes was hesitant to even shoot the ball. I think defensively they'll be better in the perimeter. Something you brought up earlier too, and I'm glad you brought it up about Dre Fuller. When he was healthy, he was turning into a heck of a two-way player. I know Coach Dawkins has talked about that in the past. He's healthy now. He got injured, and we didn't see a lot of him at the end because he got hurt with a hip injury. He's healthier. And with him and C.J. Walker, I think they're definitely a better defensive team on paper right now than they were a year ago. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and what's interesting with Dre is that he is really not molded into his full form yet. I mean, as a redshirt sophomore, what's good with Dre Fuller is that he is now healthy. Those who remember, he missed the stretch run games due to a hip injury. He had to undergo surgery. He's 100% ready to go. But offensively, we already know he's a really good perimeter defender. Arguably the team's best perimeter defender last season. They really missed him there when he was hurt. But offensively, there's a lot to work with here because he is uber athletic, very explosive. We already know he's, but going into last season, looked like he was the team's best dunker. So he's got that kind of hops, that kind of spring. And now can he use athleticism to develop his shot more? Can he move out more? Is he going to be able to get, out toward the arc a little bit? That's something that we're going to have to watch too because, I think there is something there. I think there is a lot that we haven't seen from Dre Fuller, and it's the potential is there.
So let's get down to brass tacks a little bit because I do want to eventually get to the schedule and the rest of the conference. We'll tap into the rest of the conference in a little bit. But, last year this team finished 16-14, 7-11 in the league. They were very inconsistent. Are we thinking that they could, well, I mean, they're not going to play as many games, obviously. They're only going to play 24 instead of 30. But are we thinking that this team could have a higher win percentage this year just based on the kind of talent that you have on the roster? Because, don't forget, there are a bunch of guys who are not here anymore that, obviously we're, thankful for their contributions. But, Cesar Davis is gone. Like you mentioned, Dazon Ingram's gone. Frank Burtz is gone. Matt Millan is gone. And unfortunately, Colin Smith is seeing his career stopped, at least for the moment. We don't know. We don't know what the reason, but we covered it on an earlier podcast of the situation with Colin, where he just said, I have to put my basketball career on hold for a second. But do you think this team could improve over last year's mark, Brian?
Yeah, and it better. It's a better team. And, don't forget, the main issue with last year's team was really just gelling so many new guys. They had 9 new players from the 2019 team over the 2020 team that really had to come together. Now, certainly COVID has building team chemistry difficult because, you weren't able to be around each other this summer. So, they're like young guys like Jameel Reynolds or Isaiah Adams, the freshman. That's difficult for them because they're in their first year in the program and they haven't been able to really get up to speed, in the summer. But you really only have 5 new faces on this team. A couple of those guys, I believe, are walk-ons. Sean Mobley hasn't played for this team, but he was here all last season, sitting out due to transfer rules. And then you bring in a lead guard like Darius Perry and a guy like C.J. Walker, changes the entire complexion of your team. So certainly it should be better than last year's team. There's no doubt. If it's the same, then that's a massive disappointment.
Yeah. Well, I mean, certainly Walker coming in, I mean, he wasn't, sitting out, last year with the team, but he's a no delay transfer. But go ahead, Eric. I'm sorry.
Well, couldn't I make a counter argument? I think they could be better, but the win-loss record or percentage, as you asked the question, Jeff, might be similar because, number one, look at the non-conference schedule. It's harder than last year in a lot of ways.
Excellent segue, Eric.
and I know, Murph, that to me, you brought this up with Coach Dawkins. I know you got to talk to him about, the schedule, but also the fact the state of college basketball. Let's not ignore this. There's a lot of issues right now in college basketball with games, whether they get played, they get canceled, and all that. It's multiplied by 10 compared to football. I know that was some of the things you talked about with Dawkins, right?
Yeah, so we met with Dawkins earlier today on Tuesday, and I talked to him about the Oklahoma game that's coming up this Saturday, and that non-conference schedule that you guys mentioned that we'll get into here in more in a bit. I talked about how hard it is for those freshmen that I just mentioned, with the COVID summer, how hard it's been for them to acclimate into this kind of season. But the question I really wanted to know from him today, and the answer I really wanted to give him today, was really kind of a broad question of, what do you think about the state of college basketball? Here is what Johnny Dawkins had to say when I asked him that. Coach, very open-ended question, but with the season scheduled to begin for some teams tomorrow, and we currently have about 10% of D1 teams who are on pause due to COVID. Some notable teams like Florida and Wichita State are also on pause. What do you think, in your private moments, what do you think about the state of this season and the state of college basketball right now?
I think uncertainty right now, and that's going to be that way this entire season until we can get a vaccine and we can get to some sense of normalcy. I don't expect it to be any other way. I think people are going to have to be very flexible and just play the hand that you're dealt. It is what it is. We know what we're up against, and you just need to be ready to compete when that time comes. And you have to be ready for some disruptions when some other times come. And that's just how it's going to be. Season's coming fast. I'm sure, like a lot of coaches, would like to see the season be pushed back a little to give us more time. But that's not what's happening. So, you have to play the hand that you're dealt, and that's what we're going to do. And we're not going to make excuses. Brian, we always talk about it. We're a no-excuse program. This is the hand we're dealt, and we're going to play it to the best of our abilities.
Coach, what can you say about your 2 key freshmen, Isaiah and Jameel, their early progress within the program? And with the summer being so awkward, not being able to round each other, how much do you worry about maybe that stunting their growth?
Definitely. I've really enjoyed coaching both of them. They have both of those guys have enormous potential, and so we're excited every day we see them in the gym. And they're growing, they're getting better. Things are moving fast for them now because they're freshmen, and there's a lot to learn, especially without having, as you mentioned, the spring and the summer. But I love who I think they're going to become as players in our program. They're going to be terrific. They did get hurt by not being with us this spring and summer, of course, just from a strength and agility and strength programming. They didn't get any of that. They didn't get any, of the basketball skill work that we would do with them in the off season. They didn't get any of that, which would have gave them a little bit of a head start entering now. And so it's been difficult with regards to that because you can just see where they would have been if you could have had those 6 months back. But you know what? Again, we're not going to get that time back. I've tried to, teach our guys, you have to take a next play mentality. This is what's up next for us. Let's look forward to what's in front of us instead of behind, and let's keep moving forward, positively. And that's kind of the approach we've taken. But they definitely could have used that time. It would have helped them. And I can't imagine what they would have been if they had 6 more months. But I'm sure every program's facing the same thing.
Coach, can you talk a little bit about your non-conference schedule? It's obviously loaded with 4 big, high-profile opponents. What went into scheduling that quartet of teams, and what do you think that says about your team that you're willing to schedule those kind of games?
Well, I've always scheduled, up as much as we could. And we have an opportunity this year to do the same, and we'll do it. I want our guys to always play against the best teams. And so we have this opportunity with COVID and everything that's going on. And there's a lot of uncertainty with our team. We don't know our personnel fully. There are a lot of, guys who aren't proven as of yet. But I think the best way to prepare for our conference, which is a great conference, is to play this caliber team every night. And so playing the likes of Oklahoma, playing the likes of Auburn, Michigan, Florida State, I think really just helps us as we start to go into conference play, understand the type of competition we're going to face on a nightly basis. So we're looking forward to it. I know our players are excited about it. It's a great way to start the season, and I think it'll help us in the long run.
Coach, in this kind of season where chemistry is a really kind of a big issue because you guys haven't had the chance to build a lot of it during the summer, this first challenge against Oklahoma that returned 70% of their scoring, a lot of seniors on this team, what's that challenge going to be like against a team that probably has a lot of already built-in chemistry?
Well, of course, first of all, they're a very good team. Lon Kruger does a great job, and so I know they'll be well prepared. And, yes, but that experience, that does add a lot to who they are. And for us, we just need to go out there and play within ourselves, follow along with the system and the game plan that we have established. And that's how we're going to approach it. We know we have a lot of respect for their program, and we know we have to come out and play a really good basketball game. And we need to do that for 40 minutes.
There's Johnny Dawkins visiting, guys, I know, they know it's difficult, but the season's not waiting. The season's on the horizon, and there's no excuses. Their next game is Saturday. And Eric, you and I have broken this down on the site last weekend when the schedules came out. The first 6 games of the season is where we're going to know how good this team is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
No cupcakes in the early part of the slate.
It is, in my opinion, it's the toughest schedule in the history of this program. It's one of the greatest schedules in the program. It's however you want to phrase it, but it's amazing. Like I'm staring at it right now, and we talked about it. It's on our YouTube page. We encourage you to check that out in depth. But you got Oklahoma, who you heard Coach Dawkins talk about. They could be an NCAA tournament team. Now, Auburn will not be. They have self-imposed sanctions, so they will not be eligible for the NCAA tournament. They're a young team, but it's Bruce Pearl. It's Auburn deal. And then Florida State, I think they're an ACC title contender. You got in that deal, Michigan, and before that at Michigan. And oh, by the way, in between, the league decided, hey, we don't think that's a tough enough stretch. Let's throw Houston in between.
At Houston.
Yeah. So you got Florida State, you got Michigan, Houston, Florida State, all back to back on the road. Those are 3 top 25 teams, guys. 3 top 25 teams that you can make an honest argument that all 3 of them are conference title contenders in their respective leagues. That is, there's an old saying in soccer with the World Cup and the group of death, because it meant that all 4 teams were really good and they were going to beat each other. That is a group of death type of schedule, man. That is unbelievable. And so that's why I'm a little more hesitant about the win-loss record, because I could see this team going maybe 13-11, but be a better team because they played a tough slate, 24 games, and have a pretty good net if they can get some of these wins. Jeffrey, you and I have covered this program for a long time. I dare you to find me a better non-conference schedule this program has ever had, and I tweeted this out. I would argue that the Oklahoma home opener is the biggest home opener in program history. Obviously, unfortunately, it's not going to be packed house, but when you consider the opponent, Oklahoma, Lon Kruger, and the great career he's had in college basketball, especially in the state of Florida, when he was the head coach at Florida, leading him to the Final Four with an assistant, I believe his assistant at the time, where during that era was a guy named Kirk Sparrow, which we all know. And then, oh, by the way, you got maybe one of the most anticipated debuts in the history of this program in C.J. Walker. I mean, hello.
Yeah. I mean, a tremendous game on Saturday, 2 p.m. tip. And by the way, that's going to be on ESPN Plus. The first 2 games at UCF are going to be on ESPN Plus because they play Auburn 7 o'clock on Monday. Just certainly I think it's the most anticipated home opener we've seen in a very, very long time when you factor in those things. But, it's kind of like, it's
probably since the building literally opened. When they opened against Nevada in 2007. And Mark Fox, who you covered. Mark Fox, the former Georgia coach, was the coach at Nevada at the time.
Right, and it's tough to say. I think it's really tough to say. Well, this is the best schedule because it's kind of like, well, of course it is because the schedule's truncated. First of all, right? I mean, there's no early season game against Bethune-Cookman or Florida Atlantic here. Like you're diving in with Big 12, SEC, Big 10, huge road conference game in December, and then ACC before you jump back into conference, right? So,
but he didn't duck anybody.
No, they didn't. But also these teams are also they're coming through the state, and for example, is it Auburn that's playing that tournament down in Fort Myers?
Yes.
Yeah. So they're coming on through, and. I mean, it's certainly. I do. You're absolutely right, though. That we're going to know by Christmas what we're going to be looking at here, because that last game, especially that last stretch where you go Tuesday, December 15th at Houston, the following Saturday, December 19th in Tallahassee at Florida State, and then the following Tuesday at home against Cincinnati. Those 3 games in the span of 7 days are going to be monstrous. And it's a good thing that UCF has 9 days between the Michigan and Houston game, which is the Houston game is the first of that triad, to rest up, because that's going to be a really brutal stretch. But we're going to find out real quick what kind of team we have by Christmas.
The good news is, and Murph, you brought this up when we kind of reacted to the schedule when it came out on Friday on the YouTube video, you like the back end of the schedule for them. If they can start kind of tread water here through this early beginning, you like them in the back end here.
Yeah, because you've got, they end the season with this 5-game stretch, just to pull a little part out. They end with home South Florida, at Tulane, at SMU, Temple, at ECU. Now, again, SMU can score really well. South Florida should be much better this year because they were besieged by injuries last year. Tulane is definitely not easy, but that is not, they're not backloading Memphis, Houston, Cincinnati into that part of the schedule. So if they can stay above water there early, they have a chance to pick up wins there late. And, kind of going back to my point about being better, this team was 7-11 last year in conference, and now they'll have 20 conference games this year. And I would expect a 500 record at worst. I really would expect a 10-10.
Yeah, not so much based on the shortcomings of UCF, but just based on how tough the conference is overall. And I want to talk about the conference, in general too, because Houston was picked number 1, which is no surprise. But Memphis got a couple first place votes, followed by SMU, Cincinnati, USF, rounding out the top 5. UCF was picked 8th, and Caleb Mills for Houston was the preseason player of the year. But this could be a very good year for the American, I think, this year, even with, the smaller tournament, which is what we're expecting when we get to it in March. This is going to be, I do think that this is going to be, once again, a very tough road in the American Athletic Conference, right, Brian?
Well, let's hope we get there to March. Yes, and I do agree. I think you could certainly. This is a league where 4 or 5 teams, 6 teams possibly, are gonna try to vie to get one of those spots in the tournament. I think this league is good enough and deep enough.
What do you think, Eric?
I think you both hit it dead on, but I think this team could be better than, what is it, 8th? There was the preseason pick in the league. I think they could move up. What's the ceiling here, Murph? What are we thinking here? Are we thinking what's the best case scenario deal? Where are we thinking over under 6th place? Like, is that a fair number to put it as an over under where they could finish in the league and maybe best case scenario?
You're saying 6.5, Eric?
Let's do that. If you want to go 6.5 is the over under for where they finish in the league standings. Where would you go?
Yeah, I would go over that, meaning they would have a better rank. I would go 6 or better. I have no problem with that. They're definitely part of that group. I would actually more BTs to go 5.5. I think they can be 5 or better.
Okay.
I kind of agree. One of the interesting storylines this season is going to be Wichita State and the mess that they're in. Greg Marshall is no longer the head coach.
Right.
There. He was just I don't know how what's the proper phrase? They mutually parted ways.
He was asked to leave.
He resigned with a parachute.
So, and Murph, we've been following this story since really the end of last season, where a bunch of players decided to leave the program. We're like, whoa, that's a little weird. Well, now we know why.
Yeah.
Why they left the jumping ship. So that's got a mess written all over it. They have an interim head coach. They flew to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and ended up testing positive. So they're not even in that tournament anymore. I think it could be a long year for Wichita State, which could benefit UCF because Wichita State has owned UCF since they've been in the league. UCF has never beaten Wichita State. So I think that helps UCF. SMU seems to be the flavor of the league, right? I feel like everybody's on the SMU bandwagon, Murph, because they returned a lot of guys and they could score points. I still want to see if SMU can win on the road. Maybe they can. I think Houston's the team to beat without question, which is why I'm not real thrilled that they put them right off in the middle of Michigan and Florida State. Yeah. Good Lord. Look, guys, I don't know. Whoever's creating the schedule in the American, it was the football guys that were claiming the title and going after you, not the basketball.
You got to put them in there somewhere. I mean, it's.
But do we have to put them in between Michigan and Florida State? Like, I don't think there's anybody in the country that has a rougher 3-game stretch on the road, true road games. I'm not talking neutral games and all that. Tougher 3-game stretch in the country than at Michigan, at Houston, and at Florida State. Yo. Come on, man. Are you serious? That's unbelievable. So I think Houston's a team. Memphis, Murph, Penny Hardaway, kind of under the radar this year compared to last year with all the hoopla. That's the one that I'm kind of curious.
Yeah.
How does Memphis do here with Penny after the hoopla with Wiseman and that short era? And then, Achua now a draft pick of the Miami Heat. What do we – no, not a lot.
Who Eric is very excited about, by the way.
I am excited about Achua. Especially since he's not in the league, so it's a two-way thing. He's with the Heat, and he's no longer in the league.
That's right. He's not in the American. Eric's happy about it. What about it, Brian?
Well, now you've got the next hot prospect for Memphis is Musa Cisse, right? The top 5 recruit. Another big, long 6'11" kid. NBA potential written all over him, obviously. But they returned some scores too. Lester Quinones is back. So it's not like, because the Wiseman and those guys are gone, like, no, they've got guys returning. And those guys, there's a lot of guys who, were high-end freshmen who just decided to stick around. And now you add Cisse to that, there's a reason why they're probably going to finish, I would say, top 3 in this conference again. Like, they're going to be very, very good again.
They got to learn how to win on the road, though. They struggled on the road last year, and that's why they kind of underachieved. And then you got Cincinnati, Murph, which was like a drama team of last year where you didn't know what to get from them, and they don't have Cumberland anymore. So we still kind of have questions about Cincinnati as well. So I think my point that I'm making here is I think this is a type of league where you're going to see teams – you're going to beat each other up. And there's opportunities if UCF can kind of get everybody on the same page, get that chemistry going, that they can move up here, and next thing you know, they're in that top 4, top 5, because I think some of these teams have some questions they got to answer, and they won't have the lengthy time to answer it like they would in a normal year.
Yeah. I'm just looking at the schedule. And, there's that piece there in the middle that's going to be kind of difficult, where you've got at Wichita State, which I know we talked about how depleted they are, but still, it's never a fun building to play in. Never a fun travel.
That trip just flat out stinks, man. Getting out there, that's such a tough trip.
I can't imagine somebody making that trip from Florida to Wichita. Hummer.
and then they have at Memphis a few days later. So at Wichita, Memphis, and then home against Tulsa, which is just a team that really grinds you down and is really annoying to play. Extremely so.
They're annoying to play in basketball too.
yeah, that's true. They are. No, they very much are. So that 3-game stretch in the middle is kind of interesting. Could be kind of difficult, but nothing beats. I mean, just talking to people around the program too, like it's like wow, nothing beats that first 6-game setup.
Yeah.
Well, and patience, and I'm going to say this now. I'm going to get ahead of this. All right, all you fan base out there. All right, we like you. We appreciate you tuning in. We love it. Be patient with this team. All right, because that's a 6-game stretch. They could be playing really well and go 2-4. Right?
Yeah.
That's
they could play really well, really competitive, and go 2-4.
So let's not make any irrational comments and reactions if this team gets off to a 2-4 and 1-5 start. I know that our fan base will not. The last thing they will do is jump to irrational conclusions and firing coaches on the fly after losses.
And overreact.
Yeah. All right.
Leave the overreaction to me. I'm the one who has an actual panic button in his office. All right. So, I don't know. I still like Houston. And they're going to be the king. They're going to be the king of the hill until someone knocks them off. Although I do like Memphis's chances. I'm looking forward to what Caleb Mills will be doing for them this year. I do think UCF is a little bit underrated. Boy, would it be something if they got into the top 5. I think that would be a really big that would be a really big boon for the team. But also a name to watch out for. Alexis Yetna's back for USF after that injury that he suffered last year.
Murph's guy. That's Murph's guy.
He's a dangerous dude.
His ACL injury in the preseason last year, really the day before the season started last year,
right,
changed the entire complexion of that USF team, which I think I said was going to finish second in this conference, and then they did not.
And then they didn't.
But it's because it's starting with Yetna, who's fantastic.
Yeah. All right. So
let me ask you this too, Joe Lunardi. Yes, he does have a bracketology out today. He came out today. I know everybody was waiting for it. He's got 2 teams in from the American. I think that's low. I would go over that number. Am I crazy on that? I think this could be a 3-bid league, 3 to 4.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah. Sorry, Murph. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say yeah, but I wouldn't go too far above that because isn't the tournament is are they decreasing the field like they are in the other sports?
No, not yet.
Okay.
They're still at 68. What they're going to do is they're going to have it in one site. The belief is it'll be in Indianapolis.
Or in one city, basically.
One city. Right. Because that's kind of their back home. And so do they reduce it down the road? Who knows? We'll see where we're at in a few months. Yeah. As Murph mentioned earlier in this podcast, we got to worry about getting through the regular season first.
Yeah. Well, worry about the regular season. Worry about getting through this first weekend with Oklahoma and Auburn.
Right. But I think Houston and Memphis, if I had to pick, I would have Houston 1, Memphis 2. Because I actually do like the fact that Memphis is a little under the radar. Sometimes that's better for a team than having all the expectations. So I do agree with you on that. I think it's Houston and Memphis. But I think after that, I mean, SMU, Cincinnati, I think UCF has a shot if things go well, stay healthy. I think they could be in the mix for the NCAA if things break right, because if they can win, let's say hypothetically they go 3-3 in that 6-game stretch, that's 3 quality wins. That's going to help you in the net.
Yeah.
And if you can go 10-10 in the league, 11-9 in the league, now you're talking about 13-11 and 14-10. And I don't think this year with as very few non-conference games as they're going to be played. I don't think win-loss fancy records is going to get is the end-all be-all in the NCAA tournaments. I think if you play a good enough schedule and you prove to the committee that you could beat quality teams, you're going to sneak in. So a 13-11 UCF team could sneak in if they get the right wins.
Murph, what do you think?
Yeah, I guess it's already hard for me to make here's the resume case, but just in terms of like chances of, or the odds that more than two AAC teams make it, I think Houston and Memphis are basically near locks. Houston's definitely a lock, and then you've got like 3 or 4 teams, and Eric mentioned them all with Cincinnati and UCF and SMU that I think are real tournament contenders. So. No, I agree. The question is over under 2.5 AAC teams in the tournament? I would take the over.
All right. Well, we're going to find out first off on Saturday, 2 p.m. ESPN Plus. UCF
Murph's
against
be there.
Oklahoma. Murph's going to be there. You know who else is going to be there? Our boy Mike O'Donnell, who is calling both games on opening weekend. The Oklahoma game on Saturday afternoon, and then the Auburn game Monday at 7 p.m. on ESPN Plus. It'll be the Mike O'Donnell show both times. I forget who he's working with. Have you found out who he's working with on these games, Eric?
I don't. I'm going to find out whenever I log in. I know. He hasn't promoted it, so I'm not going to push him, but I'm going to be tuned in, so I'll find out when I tune in. It's going to be fun.
I know. We're going to holler at Mike again after these first 2 games and get his take on this, and we're hoping to get Taylor Young involved as well because they've both been out. It's a holiday week, so what are you going to do? But thanks to those two for their insights. As always, make sure you follow them, and of course follow us for all the latest UCF basketball news as well. Oklahoma Saturday 2 p.m. at Edition Financial Arena on ESPN Plus will be the opener. Looking forward to CJ Walker once again. That should be fun. All right, don't go away. We'll be right back. We'll flip it over to the women's side. They're actually starting their season Wednesday against UVA. We'll get a quick preview when we return. It's the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff, Brian, and Eric with you here as we wrap up. By the way, recording this Tuesday before Thanksgiving. The day before Thanksgiving, Wednesday, UCF women's basketball begins. This is the first non-football NCAA UCF event of the year. Wednesday, UCF against Virginia. And that game will be on ESPN Plus, 6 p.m. tip the day before Thanksgiving. Let's talk about UCF women's basketball because amid all the excitement about the men's team, this women's team, even with the departure of the great KK Wright, which I can't believe KK Wright's not even here anymore. It seems like she's just been a fixture for so long. UCF is expected to be a contender once again in the American. In fact, UCF is picked second in the league behind USF. One first place vote from the coaches went to UCF. And by the way, the coaches, you can't vote for yourself. So it looks like and with UConn gone this year, remember, there's a good chance that UCF will have a shot at a conference championship. One preseason all-conference team member, that's Brittany Smith, who it just made leaps and bounds last year for UCF. And when you think about it, this team actually still brings back a lot of talent. Janaea Walker, Masseny Kaba, Cortasia Sanders are your main seniors. You get a couple players with who are really in a position to start contributing as veterans. Becca Ripley, who sat out last year with transfer, good outside shooter who came in from Miami. She's going to be available. Brittany Smith is a junior now out of Boone High School. Obviously, we talked about one of the better post players in the American. Destiny Thomas is back as well and the player that I'm really looking forward to make a big leap this year is junior Diamond Battles, the guard out of Winter Haven, who more or less played the other point guard aside from KK and has developed, I think, into a really good defender. And I'm also looking forward to see what we get from Brianna Frazier out of Jersey City, New Jersey, who is a highly touted recruit, along with several other recruits who are going to be here and who we're going to be hearing about as well, including Kiara Brown, a guard out of Palm Beach Gardens. But Eric Lopez, this team looks like they could really surprise some people, and they're not going to do it with the spectacularness of having the amazing KK Wright doing all the work. Not that she did all the work, but she was clearly the straw that stirred the drink last year. What are we expecting from this team? I think it's going to be more a whole is greater than the sum of the parts situation, don't you think?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a more of a team unit. I don't know if you're going to have one dominant scorer. I think you might have different leading scores each night. Coach Abe has been available in the media availabilities a couple times here recently, and I got a chance to ask her about that. Like, what is the strength of this team moving forward? And she talked about the low post, which is the strength of this team. There's no doubt. This team will be different offensively. I think the belief is that the offense will come from inside, then work itself outside. And so I asked her about being the insides, the low post players, the backcourt. Of course, you mentioned no KK. Who's going to step up in that role? Is it Diamond Battles? Is it Sanders? Or is it a collective unit? They're going to have to learn that quick, though, because they got, just like the men's, they got a tough non-conference schedule. But that's nothing new to Coach Abe, who has risen the program to a different level. Now the goal is to maintain it and compete for the conference title. Here's Coach Abe talking about this team and the outlook.
Post players are phenomenally experienced. I mean, we got everybody back, and have tons of playing experience in Brittany, obviously, Masseny, Janaea, Destiny, and then we added a freshman. So our post players are really strong, where last year was our guard play, right? Well, obviously, Brittany and Moss were really phenomenal last year, but I think our post players are our strength. So now we got to work on finding some numbers from our guards. I mean, Diamond Battles can step up and do that. Cortazia Saunders can step up and do that. And then we're looking for, who's going to be the next one up that can, step up and put some points up at the guard spot. So I think this year is going to be, a lot of our points are going to be coming from our post. And then as we get going, I think our guards will kind of fill in and step in. And because I think that, in practice, we've been working on Brittany getting doubled, Moss getting doubled, and how we're going to handle those kind of things. And then people just stepping up and being confident shots. So to answer your question, I think our strength is our post play this year.
Since you've been here every year, I feel like we always ask you about, man, how are you going to replace so-and-so in the backcourt? And then someone else steps up that, must in the public don't get to see. And we're like surprised. You look at this year, obviously with KK graduating, what do you expect from your backcourt, in particular, Diamond Battles and Sanders and even Anna Burney, who I know got a little run last year?
Yeah, I mean, I think they know that. I mean, I think we've been training for that since KK has been gone, and they're all super talented. Obviously, our strength is going to be in our post, but since day one, since we've been working, we've all been working really hard as individually as position coaches to really get their confidence up and get them to take their game shots. They're not going to be KK, and they don't have to be KK, So what Diamond is really good at, she needs to do. What Tay's really good at, she needs to do. What Anna's really good at, she needs to do. I mean, so that's kind of Rebecca Ripley's now playing. So what Rebecca needs to do is really good at. Those are the things she needs to do. So it's going to be a different look for the team, but they all need to step up and take some big shots and take shots by committing. It's not just going to be one guard doing all the work.
Coach, I feel like you and Coach Dawkins are like in direct competition with each other as far as how to top each other in scheduling. I mean, you both have tough non-conference schedule. I wanted to ask you about the non-conference schedule and how you navigated through all the climate that we're in. You're going to host Virginia, comes here. Florida Gulf Coast comes here. They're an NCAA tournament team. You go to LSU and Georgia Tech.
Yeah, the COVID situation really changed the scheduling. But to be honest, we had everybody on our schedule besides Georgia Tech. So we had Virginia already. We just moved the date. We already had Florida Gulf Coast. We had played them the year before. LSU is the American SEC Challenge. So we already had them. And then we added Georgia Tech. And obviously some schools had to drop. And now we're putting some our league games in December. So we really had those three already scheduled. And the purpose for that is for the RPI net, to keep our league strong. We really want to challenge ourselves. We're just jumping into a big game right away because we missed a lot of the preseason games that we had to drop before. So I think that's somebody asked me about nerves and how we're going to do. That's the unknown right now because nobody in the country's had a lot of opportunity to play games before this. So I think a big difference is going to be we're going to play three or four conference games in December because we've gone to 20 games in the league. So that's going to be a little different for us too.
I wondered about your thoughts, the league going to 20 games, of course, no UConn, but also the conference tournament going to Texas. Your thoughts on some of the tweaks there as far as the league's concerned?
Well, the league, we tweaked that for this year and this year only, just because we were so concerned about games. It's really hard to get games right now. We didn't know what the league and the head coaches, we've had many conversations about what to do. And we just talked about that. Like this year we're going to have to, because we can control our conference and our schedule. And, if we miss a game, we can reschedule, but out of conference, if you lose a game, you're probably not going to be able to reschedule that. So, we talked about that a lot, and that we're going to play 20 this year and go back to 16, after this year, hopefully this COVID is going to go away. So we just really wanted our players to have an opportunity to play and have as many games as possible to play this year. That's kind of where we're at right now. The tournament in Texas, I think it's going to be fun having it. It's going to be a lot of excitement and things going on with the men's teams there too. So we'll be able to watch our men's team and see. It's going to be like a festival of basketball. I think it's going to be really fun there.
That was Coach Abe talking about the non-conference schedule and then the 20-game slate, Jeffrey. 20 games. And you mentioned it, no UConn. So this is going to be fascinating now. How does the league – I think there's a little extra urgency here because there is no UConn. The title is up for grabs here. And it's, the belief is, I think it's UCF and USF. We both have covered both programs. They're very opposite, and what kind of makes it fun and fascinating, because you got Jose Fernandez, who believes in the three-point shooting and the up-tempo. You got Abe. They asked Abe about who are some of your three-point shooters, and she had this look like, ugh, three-point shooting. I don't believe.
You mentioned outside shooting to Coach Abe, and she.
Right. She gets the great one-liner about, there's a lot of them that could take them, but who could actually make them? She hates.
I love Coach Abe for that.
Make them. So I think that's going to be a question, because KK obviously was one of the better three-point shooters. Siani Martin was a great three-point shooter. They don't have her, right?
Right.
And Gale as well. So that is a question mark about this offense. But she doesn't. She believes in quality possessions and quality shots, and I think it's her point. But you look at the schedule and the way she broke it down. At LSU, that's an NCAA tournament team. Georgia Tech was in a bubble last year. They could have been an NCAA tournament team. Florida Gulf Coast, speaking of three-point shooting, they are an NCAA perennial. They've dominated the A-Sun with their perimeter shooting. And then Virginia, Tina Thompson is the head coach. They're kind of trying to get back to what Virginia basketball used to be. So that's a tough slate. She broke that down. And then the league games, I think, are going to be fascinating, because Tulane, I think a lot of people think Tulane could be the sleeper there. Cincinnati, I know you like. The big question with Cincinnati is going to be they lose a lot of players around Thomas. They're kind of like UCF in that opposite, in that they return their best player, but they lose everything around there, whereas UCF loses their best player but returns a pretty good nucleus. So a lot of intrigue in the league, but for them, I think she's curious to see how this group handles things, especially with the lack of games because of COVID. They usually get some scrimmages in that they haven't been able to do. So I think those are the questions, and I think you brought up a good one. The backcourt, I think, is going to be fascinating. With does Battles take the next level? Is it a Cortez Sanders, or is it somebody like Burry, who's a good shooter, three-point shooter, or Ripley? I think those are two shooters to keep in mind. I'm fascinated to see how the backcourt, the way she described it there, it could be by committee here, Jeffrey, to use a term that we hear a lot in like baseball and football.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot. The guards are going to be relied upon very much for ball handling and defense in that case. And it's just going to be a steady diet of two post players at any one time, because you've got the leading returning scorer is Brittany Smith, who last year was the only player not named KK Wright who averaged double figures. She averaged 10.5 a game, plus 5.3 rebounds. Masseny Kaba also comes back. She's the second highest returning scorer, 8.4, 6.7. We mentioned Georgia Gale, who was a very good outside shooter, led the team in threes, but she's gone. And so, who does pick up the outside shooting? We're not 100% sure yet, but Diamond Battles, I don't, KK, like you said, was a 3-point threat. She was 32%, which is not the best, but she still made 36 of them which was second best on the team. Diamond only attempted 4 3-pointers all of last year, didn't make any of them. But her defensive statistics, I think, is where she really came up big. 39 steals last year. It was just a real steady presence as that second point guard. She was second on the team in assists behind KK. So I'm looking for Diamond to really make the leap here. And some of those other, lesser known front court players who are playing sort of that that sort of 2 or 3 in coach's offense, like Janaea Walker, Cortasia Sanders, they're going to expect some contributions out of them as well. But it's pretty much going to be, talking about the post players, it's going to be a 3-headed monster this year with Destiny Thomas, Masseny Kaba, and Brittany Smith.
They're going to dominate the boards, right? You think they dominate the paint. And I think you make a great point. If Sanders in battles put ball pressure on the ball, that's going to create the defensive intent. Because this team, at the end of the day, their identity is defense. So force turnovers, get easy baskets, that's their game. And it starts with ball pressure from the backcourt players and then the size inside to intimidate in the paint. And I think that's going to be key for them on the defensive side of the ball. I think the shooting perimeter, the 2 names I would keep an eye on is Anna Burney, the young sophomore. I have heard that she's a really good shooter, and then Ripley. I heard that those 2 can really shoot the ball. So I think those are 2 names that didn't play a lot because obviously the depth, they get their opportunities this year. But let's be real. This team's going to go through inside, and I think the great combo of Brittany Smith and Kaba, dominant scores. I think those are going to be your 2 leading scorers, don't you? I think that's if Abe had it in the best cases, dominate the boards, score inside, high percentage shots, and defend. And I think that's going to be the recipe for this season, led by Kaba. And of course, that's Brittany Smith, who's got a lot of attention, but Kaba's the senior. And I talked to her in media availability about what she's worked on in her game and how she and Brittany complement each other. Just tell me, what have you been working on your game this offseason, and just tell me about now that you're excited that the season's about to start.
So I'm very excited. The season's about to start, season opener tomorrow. I've just been working on, expanding my game a little more, hitting some more high post shots, mid-range, looking for Brittany Smith on a lot of high-low passes, working on my assists. So, yeah.
How do you complement Brittany Smith and you 2 playing together? Coach Abe has talked about the scoring is going to come from inside, and you 2 in particular. Just describe how you 2 complement each other.
We've been working with each other a lot, learning how to pass to each other in high-low situations. So I think that's really going to be great. Brittany's a great scorer on low block, and since I'm expanding my game now, they're either going to have to guard me or they're going to have to guard her. So just having us 2 working in there will be great.
There you go. There's Masseny Kaba. So that's going to be fascinating to see those 2 complement each other, play inside. The big question, though, I think, Jeffrey, we're going to have as these games get going, who's going to be – it's easy to say, right, that every team, we'll have balanced scoring and it could be somebody each night. That's easy to say. But who's going to be the player that takes over a game? Is there a player on this roster that could take over a game in the last few minutes like KK did? Because to me, that is why, and I did the UCF series this year, the top 80 female athletes of all time, and I had KK's the greatest women's basketball player ranked. And the reason I did was how many games, you think about how many games she took over in the fourth quarter, especially the South Florida rivalry, where she dominated the fourth quarter against South Florida and really flipped that rivalry. One of the great closers that program's ever had. That to me is my biggest concern about this year's team is you're going to be in some tight battles. Who's going to be the player that says, you know what, I got this. I can take the shot. You need a couple players to do that. What you don't want is a bunch of players looking at each other saying, well, are you taking over? Are you taking over? That's my biggest question and concern, Jeffrey.
Yeah, especially if you're playing a bigger team that just clogs up the middle on you, right? And you can't keep going back to that bread and butter of whoever the hot player is inside. If Smith and Kaba and or Thomas are not going to provide you that late scoring, then someone in the backcourt is going to have to create a shot down the stretch. So like you were saying, who is that going to be? KK, that's the thing that she was so exceptional at. Well, I mean, among many things, right? But she was so exceptional at creating her own shot. And, I don't know if there's anyone on this roster right now that can do that. Of course, Coach Abe would know, but she's not going to let anybody know about it. But That's where I think
Maybe she doesn't. Maybe she doesn't.
Well, I mean,
either.
well, I was thinking like that.
Sometimes, you know.
Well, yeah, but I was thinking that's where some of these younger players, I think, can probably, create some opportunities for themselves. Like, we mentioned.
Sure.
I know you mentioned the outside shooting of Anna Burney and possibly
Ripley.
Becca Ripley too, but what does Brianna Frazier bring to the table, right? I mean, we've I've seen the highlights of her from Jersey City because I'm a Jersey boy too, and boy, she can play. But is she the one who's going to be a redshirt freshman? Is she going to be relied upon to take over late in games? I don't know. It's going to be someone's going to have to step up in those in those key moments. Obviously it was KK, and before her there were a couple contributors that had the opportunity to do that. So, but it's just that's the part that's going to be really interesting to watch with this team.
And that could be the difference between winning the conference championship and finishing second or third.
Yeah,
like little things like that. And that's going to be interesting to see as this league plays.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very fascinated, Jeffrey, to see how the league now does post UConn, because UConn obviously the one thing that UConn was good for in the American was the women's basketball, and now they're gone. So who steps up? Can this league be a multiple bid league in women's basketball, or are they going to be a one bid league? And I think it's got the potential to be a multi-bid league. Okay. I think South Florida could be a tournament team. UCF, I think, and here's the thing about Coach A, been talking to people. Next year's the year to watch out.
Mm-hmm.
They got some great recruits coming in. They had a highly recruit just signed that's going to be a part of next year's team. It's probably alongside KK, the highest recruit they've had. Certainly the highest recruit Abe has had. Remember, KK was not an Abe recruit.
Right. She was brought in by Coach Williams from Jones High School. And the players you're talking about, the two key players that they just announced the signings are Layla Jewett and Rachel Harjo, who Layla Jewett from Bishop Ireton High School in Woodbridge, Virginia. 4-star recruit, 84th in the top 100, and the fifth best player in the state of Virginia. That's tremendous.
Huge. I mean, since that came out, nothing but like people are like, it's like there's like, I mean, I'm kind of joking here, but I wouldn't be shocked if there's like a clock inside, like, all right, how long before she could be on the court?
Right.
Show up. They're really excited about next year's group with this class coming in. So the future's bright with this program, what Coach Abe has done. But this year, the question with this year is this team good enough to get back to the tournament? And I think we'll learn a lot with this non-conference schedule. I know it sounds like a broken record, what we just said with the men's, but how they do there could play a role. And I'm going to say the same thing I said earlier about Coach Dawkins. Please, fans, don't freak out if this women's team gets off to a bit of a slow start.
Yeah.
Because, again, tough schedule, because we haven't even mentioned they open with Tulane in conference play at home early. That's not easy. Tulane has given UCF fits. That is not a good matchup. Yeah,
and they're projected to be third in the conference this year too.
A lot of people like Tulane as a sleeper. So I think that's a tough game. And look at the non-conference. They have to go to Tulsa, okay, and then have a quick turnaround and go to Georgia Tech. That is a rough
two days later. They're traveling from Tulsa they're traveling from Tulsa to Atlanta and then back home.
Yes.
Right before Christmas.
I don't be shocked if this team is kind of hovering at 500 and they're still learning about each other, because it's a bit of a transition. And remember, the lack of being together because of what's been going on with COVID, I think you might see some sluggish basketball early on. So I think there's some questions, but I think this team will get better as the year goes on, as they figure some things out, hopefully. And hopefully this league can be a multi-bid league, and probably in the Sunshine State. It's not an accident, Jeffrey, that the league has set up UCF and USF to close the regular season in Tampa. I think everybody believes that could be for the regular season title. I look for UCF, by the way. I'll give you this prediction. I think they will be on national television on ESPN family of networks, on ESPN2, ESPN, or ESPNU the most. This will be the most times they'll be on in program history, because I think I think they're going to be on a bunch of times, especially on those Sundays that ESPN likes to put women's basketball opposite football. I think you're going to see UCF, especially that Super Bowl Sunday. Me and Murph talked about this when we did our video preview, we recapped the schedule. South Florida comes to UCF on Super Bowl Sunday.
February 7th.
Yep. On the Super Bowl Sunday. That's going to be on. I guarantee you that's going to be on one of the ESPN channels.
I think they played once before in a Super Bowl Sunday the last couple of years too, haven't they?
That could be true.
Quite possibly. I know
around that time frame at least.
Because I remember watching a game and then turning on football like right after that. Like it got me through that last couple of hours until the Super Bowl. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to that Tuesday, March 2nd game, that last game of the season at Tampa. And you're right. If things go well for this team, that really could be a serious showdown between those two. And, of course, the American Athletic Conference Championship right after that. Remember, this year, the women and the men, they cross over. The women's championship is on Thursday, March 11th. That's the same day as the first round of the men's championship. All right, so it's going to be a quick turnaround for a great week of basketball, Murph, out in Fort Worth for you there. That's going to be a lot of fun.
I'm there for all the basketball. I want all the basketball.
Give me all the basketball.
I think it's fantastic.
It's a shame that they don't do what Conference USA does, where they played at the Texas Star in Frisco, and they have two courts going at the same time. That's awesome.
That'd be great.
That would be so sick.
That would be like the NBA league. You know, the NBA this past year with Disney. That'd be great.
God, that would be.
By the way, Murph's going to get a lot of you and Murph could get a lot of basketball in. Jeff, you look at the schedules for both the men and the women.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of double headers on the same day. December 30th, UCF men and women both have home games. January 17th, January 27th, February 10th, February 27th, February 14th. Home and away games. They're doing double headers like Valentine's Day. The men and the women are at Cincinnati. Wichita, I think January 30th, they're both at Wichita, if I'm not mistaken. I've kind of scanned through it. A lot of double headers, Jeffrey. I was trying to remember. It kind of reminded me of the A-Sun. Didn't the A-Sun used to do that too with some men's and women's hoops double headers?
They did it more often than it happened in Conference USA, but it still wasn't very often. They still kept the game staggered in the A-Sun, where you had I think you would have the men would play Thursday and Saturday, and then the women would play mostly Friday and Sunday. And Sunday would be like an afternoon game. But they did have a couple times they had some doubleheaders here and there. And then
do you like the double?
I do. But you got to be careful with TV. You got to give them enough room. I remember there was one occasion, I think, when we were in non-conference play. When we were still in Conference USA, that they had a back-to-back at home, and then I think the women's game beforehand went to overtime, and that delayed the start of the men's game. Now, it was great for the women because the crowd was filtering in for the men's game, and it's a shame they weren't there for the women's game too, but the crowd was filtering in for the end of the women's game, and the atmosphere was pretty tight in there. But then it also, from a TV production perspective, it also delayed the start of the men's game, and I'm pretty sure the TV producers weren't too pleased with that. But I personally like it because I love having just basketball palooza as much as humanly possible. But I don't think we'll see. I think you'll see a situation where if they're playing back to back on the same day at home, right? You'll see like a 2 p.m. tip for one, and then a 6 or 7 p.m. tip for the other.
Do you think it'll be more of a day-night double header instead of like, I don't.
Yeah, it won't be like a noon 3 kind of deal. It'll be more like a noon and then a 6, or a 2 and then a 7, right?
That's a lot to ask Murph to stay that long in the building. I mean, I think you got to help Murph out a little bit.
No, well, that's why we have all those. Listen, that's why we have all those restaurants down there. We go and grab a bite to eat at Burger U and then come back.
I am well versed in taking in 12 hours of Pac-12, Pac-10 basketball during their conference tournament, so that's fine.
And you did so willingly.
Yeah, I did. And then when UCF, remember when they were, the year they went to the tournament 2 years ago, and then they were one and done at Memphis, I didn't care. I stayed in Memphis the entire weekend. It was great.
Had a good time. Watched a lot of hoops.
I sure did.
So
enjoyed every second.
All right. Well, listen. I'm just relieved that I'm hoping that we'll get all these games off. Which, by the way, at least to this point, like we said, we're recording this Tuesday night. Hey, the UCF football has gotten all of its games off this year without any COVID-related issues, at least as far as we know. So, which is really, when you think about it, an amazing accomplishment. And we're hoping that they get the USF game off on Friday. And, same goes for basketball. Women's basketball against Virginia, opener at 6 p.m., ESPN Plus. That's Wednesday, the day before Thanksgiving, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. The men play Saturday, 2 p.m. against Oklahoma. And, of course, the war on I-4 to close out the regular season for UCF football on Friday at 3:30 on ESPN. All right, let's go ahead and wrap this puppy up. We got a lot still to get to you for this particular week. Previewing everything coming up. We got all of our usual football stuff coming out on Friday. We'll take the day off on Thursday because we have families too, and then we'll be right back at it Friday and then Saturday with basketball coverage. So that should be a lot of fun.
Got
football coverage
night
on
shift.
Yep. Don't forget night shift after the game. After that 3:30 kick. That should be. You guys have done such a great job with that. So make sure you flip onto our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Black and Gold Banneret. youtube.com/Black and Gold Banneret. Make sure you spell out the "and." By the way, that's how that works. But you know what, Eric? Not a lot of sports equinox in the fall this year, and I think it's kind of nice. But the equinox happens right over Thanksgiving.
It's going to change in the spring, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's going to be big. But it's going to be fun. Hopefully we get these in. And like I said, night shift, 10 minutes after the conclusion of football on Friday and basketball. We'll do one on basketball. It's going to be great. Murph will be joining us from Tampa on Friday and then from the arena somewhere on Saturday. It's going to be great. And Andrew Glukoff, of course.
Yes, it'll be fun. So be sure to be on the lookout for that and follow us on Twitter, UCF_Banneret, for all the latest updates on that, as well as our Facebook page, facebook.com/Black and Gold Banneret. And of course, don't forget, blackandgoldbanneret.com. All your latest UCF news right there on the mothership, part of the SB Nation network covering UCF sports. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Hey, you guys be safe and have a happy Thanksgiving, all right?
Wait.
Wait, what?
We are forgetting something here.
What are we forgetting now?
During the break. Jake Hescock is coming back to UCF football.
Oh,
yes.
We almost forgot Jake about as much as. Listen, everybody almost forgot Jake this year, and I feel bad about that. But he kind of dropped that on you in the press conference, right?
It came out of nowhere. I was actually asking him a question today, by the way. So, yes, I was asking Jake Hescock a question today about his favorite memories being a UCF player, because as a senior, the year's winding down, his career's almost over. What's your favorite memories? And he talked about the catching his first collegiate touchdown in the 2018 American Athletic Conference Championship game, the going to the Fiesta Bowl, beating Stanford last year. And then he ends it with, and I hope to create more memories next year. And it's like, it's another one. I was like,
oh, really? Mm-hmm. What?
So yes, Jake Hescock, as all players are afforded this year, obviously everyone gets an extra year of eligibility in 2021. This is sort of a free roll. And I've written about this for the site tonight, but Jake Hescock has decided to take advantage of the extra year, and he will come back as a, double red, what would you call it, a super red shirt senior? It'll be his 6th year in college football.
We need it needs to be a color, like a maroon shirt, something like that, dark red,
He's taking the Michael Kalubayali route, right? Kalubayali went 6 years. So
what is it with these tight ends staying 6 years? Like, these guys are old men when they play. I mean, Jordan Akins was a baseball player. He played here until he was almost in his 30s.
Yeah, but UCF will definitely take it because they bring so much experience, and in that tight end room where there's 4 freshmen in there, including Gabe Davis's younger brother Jordan. I think he looks forward to mentoring those guys. But also, he just admitted, I think he also knows that his football career does not extend past college. So if someone's going to give him another chance to play, organized, real high-level football, he's going to take it.
And get a free education.
Correct. I'm sure he's in a master's program somewhere. I don't know. But, now we'll have to figure out, are there others who are coming back? We obviously saw a lot of seniors walk on senior day against Cincinnati, and that included your expected players like Marlon Williams and Richie Grant, Aaron Robinson, Trey Nixon, and so many others. So you would assume that everyone who walked there, will not be back. But, there were some seniors who didn't walk. Jake was one of them. I don't believe that Christopher DeLoach walked. I don't think Josh McMullen, the offensive tackle, I don't think he walked. I'm not saying those guys are coming back, but I thought it was, I guess now, with Hescock not walking and those other guys not walking either, like maybe there's a reason why. So I guess we'll find out. But the upshot here is that yes, we have Jake Hescock back in our lives for another season, his 4th at UCF and 6th in college football.
I'll take
it. The lights did not go out on his career like it did on the stadium on Saturday, is what you're saying.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
Well, the lights came back on by halftime.
All right, you two were there. What happened?
I don't know.
We had a power failure. I mean, everything.
We never got an answer. We never got an explanation.
No, I never found out. Did you, Murph?
No, it's probably like the guy from Airplane. He just unplugged it and said "kidding," and then just plugged it back in.
Well, it took a little while there because it was getting pretty dark there. I was worried that they might have to pause the game if they didn't get the lights back up and running. Fortunately, they did, but we didn't lose audio, we didn't lose the video board, we didn't lose any of those other things. It was just the lights.
We did lose the video board for about a second because I remember a test pattern came up on the Jumbotron, so that's usually not what you want. And all the LED screens glitched. The press box lost electricity for a minute, or not like really for a second, like literally a split second. But like everything went down. Like and what was hilarious is everything went down on a play where Cincinnati scored a touchdown.
Right.
That was called back due to an inadvertent whistle.
Right, and I would imagine that the inadvertent whistle had something to do with the power outage.
I would imagine so because the referees could certainly tell. Like it wasn't dark yet, but it was dusk.
Yeah,
and the referees could tell that all of a sudden, hey, it's dark in here. But yeah, good thing it didn't happen an hour later, or else they definitely would have had to stop the game.
And it would have been because it would have been impossible to see. It would have been pitch dark in the stadium. So anyway, funny how that all works. I like that. But anyway, tales from UCF football. Sometimes it's stuff is weird. But we got one more game. One more game of weird. I'm
sticking to my story, by the way. I'm sticking to my story. I said a night shift. I think it was The Undertaker. His last weekend, retiring 30 years, he turned the lights out. I think it was a tribute to The Undertaker, so I think it was very classy.
Yeah, well, he never showed up, so how do you like that anyway?
He sometimes doesn't, but he really is.
Well,
Murph was wearing purple. I was beautiful. Great gear by Murph. Great gear.
It was more maroon, I would say, right, Murph?
I was wearing a purple hat, purple tie. The shirt was kind of maroonish. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll go with it. All right. Well, you'll be in Tampa.
Thanks for believing me on what clothes I chose to wear, Jeff. Really appreciate your belief.
I was impressed with the coordination. I really was.
I know, but it sounds like you don't believe me when I say I wore purple, and you're like, "Yeah, I'll buy it."
I thought it was more maroon. I mean, even your mask was well tailored to the occasion.
Look, you got to make the best out of a pandemic.
Look, that's solid. That's like, when you wear the coordinating socks and everything. I always wanted to be that guy, the coordinating sock guy. But anyway.
I do that too.
Yeah, I don't. Anyway, I don't know why. I wish I did. All right. Enough of my complaining. All right. For Eric and Murph, I'm Jeff. Listen, thank you so much for listening. Don't forget, of course, women's basketball Wednesday at 6. We'll be covering the football. Murph, you'll be in Tampa, right?
Yes, of course.
Yes, Murph will be in Tampa. The rest of us will be watching from home and following things along on social media. Make sure you follow our live thread. On behalf of all of us at Black and Gold Banneret, we wish all of you a very happy, healthy, and safe Thanksgiving holiday. Please stay safe. COVID is still raging itself all over the place. Please do the right thing. Protect your family members, protect your friends as best you can. And I know this Thanksgiving is just going to be weird, but something, we'll be talking about it for years and years to come, and it's not going to last forever. So all the best to you and yours this Thanksgiving, and we'll be catching up with you again next week right here on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. For Eric and Brian, I'm Jeff. Happy Thanksgiving.